He essentially trained me to not say anything, and that was our secret.
Chris was an 11-year-old New Jersey Boy Scout when he says his life became consumed with a dark secret.
You do everything you can to block it out of your mind.
He says his Boy Scout troop leader, Stephen Corcoran, sexually abused him hundreds of times over 5 years.
Couldn't even tell you every location it happened in. It became that normal.
Chris, whose last name we are withholding at his request, says Corcoran began paying special attention to him as soon as he joined, eventually becoming a trusted family friend. But then, as he describes, things took a sickening turn just weeks after he hit puberty.
Before one of the meetings, he took me over to his apartment and said, hey, listen, there's beer in the fridge, help yourself. That's a bottle opener. Whenever you want, go in there and take whatever you want. Then he breaks out a stash of porn, and then one thing led to another. And by that point, you know, I was 11 and essentially intoxicated and not knowing what to do and what was happening to my body.
How did you react?
I was literally frozen. I didn't know what to do. You know, I remember being stiff, my body was stiff as a board on his couch. I couldn't move.
Chris says he's finally coming out of the shadows, sharing his story 2 decades later. His adulthood, he says, plagued by depression, anxiety, and anger.
I've had this kind of like whirlwind of mess throughout my adult life. I'm 35 years old, I'm still dealing with this like it happened yesterday.
Now, Chris, along with 2 other former Boy Scouts, has filed a lawsuit against the Boy Scouts of America, saying they did not do enough to prevent the sexual abuse.
And look at his interaction with the kids. If someone went down there with knowledge of what grooming looks like, they probably could have spotted it in 5 minutes. They chose not to do this.
He says there was no escaping it.
How much alone time were you spending with Steve?
Way too much. Eventually it became that, hours per week.
The abuse, he says, would continue on troop outings, like this ski trip.
There's an adult right there in his underwear next to me.
Those are his underwear?
Those are his boxers. So at what point does someone say, hey, there's a problem here? How does someone not realize that there's an issue?
He said his troop leader openly provided young scouts with alcohol.
On some of the trips, he literally turned it into a booze fest.
And in one instance, an adult friend of Corcoran's allegedly witnessing the sexual abuse.
He saw you and Steve together.
Yes.
Did he confront Steve?
Yes, he did.
And how did Steve respond?
Steve told me he played it off. He said, you need to be more careful in the future. And then that friend just disappeared out of the troop and just walked away from it. You know, he didn't like do what normal people would do, like call the police.
Chris says the abuse finally ended when he was 16, but by then his former scoutmaster had become a close family friend and was even a guest at his wedding.
I can't believe the guy made it to my wedding. Unfortunately, I originally left him off the list for the wedding, and my wife asked me, well, what about him? And I remember I didn't have an answer to say no. At the time, I couldn't justify saying no without telling the truth.
His wife, Tina, had no idea about the pain Chris says he suffered as a child. He opened up to her almost 6 years into their marriage.
And what did he tell you?
It was like a one statement, Steve abused me. I mean, I haven't seen these pictures in years, and I hope never to see them again, honestly, but I had no earthly idea. I mean, now I see, you know, I see pain, but...
You see pain on that face?
In that face, yeah.
Chris says he finally confided in his attorney at the time.
So I broke down in absolute tears and just told him.
What'd you tell him?
I told him exactly what happened.
And that was the first time you really reconciled it.
Oh, absolutely.
How tough was that?
Tough.
In a statement to ABC News, the Boy Scouts of America writing they are outraged there have been times when scouts were abused, and we sincerely apologize to victims and their families. In the many years since these alleged actions occurred, we have continued to evaluate and strengthen our efforts to protect youth.
It's time that the Boy Scouts of America take responsibility for what went on.
Bruce Nagel represents Chris in his civil suit against the Boy Scouts of America.
What do you hope to achieve in this lawsuit?
Well, we want to bring to light that this is an epidemic throughout the United States.
Stephen Corcoran's attorney maintains that his client is innocent of the abuse allegations, but in a separate case, Corcoran, now 49, was found guilty of possession of child pornography. In June of this year, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison.
If you could say anything to him today, what would you say?
I would ask him why me. For some reason, he chose me. I don't know.
This is not the first time the Boy Scouts of America has been accused of harboring abusers in its ranks of scout leaders. In 2010, a Portland jury awarded former Scout Kerry Lewis almost $20 million in damages for the sexual abuse he says he suffered in the 80s by former Assistant Scoutmaster Timmer Dykes.
If you want to join, please do so. But just keep your eyes open. Be aware.
Lawyers for Lewis successfully argued that at the time, the organization knew Dykes had a history of child molestation. Dykes, who eventually served prison time for sex with minors, admitted as early as 1983 that he had molested 17 boys.
If you put the interests of your organization ahead of the safety of children, the guardians of the community's safety, which we call juries, will hold you accountable.
The month-long trial also revealed the Scouts kept secret files of alleged child molesters for decades.
The perversion files, which is a term used internally by the Boy Scouts, are about 5,000 files of alleged and in some cases proven sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts.
The Los Angeles Times spent a year creating this database of the Boy Scouts files. Kim Christensen led the paper's investigation.
The whole idea of the perversion files with the Scouts was they were intended to keep abusive Scout leaders from rejoining after they'd been found out.
In the past, they have said Scouts are safer because those files exist. According to the LA Times analysis, the alleged abuse occurred all throughout the country and followed a now familiar pattern.
The abusive Scout leaders would often groom the kids, buy them alcohol, show them porn, and then the abuse would start.
The newspaper said that in many cases, the Boy Scouts did not report the alleged abuser to authorities. The alleged victims suffering in secret.
It's a lifelong, scarring thing for a lot of these kids.
The Boy Scouts of America has since implemented new policies, including criminal background checks for adult leaders, requiring 2 or more adults to be present at all times during scouting activities, prompt mandatory reporting of any allegation or suspicion of abuse, and a helpline to report suspected abuse. As for Chris, he says intense therapy and the support of his wife are helping him heal.
If and when he wants to tell me more than he already has, he will, but he just needs someone to take care of him.
For Nightline, I'm Paula Ferris in New Jersey.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.